The Riverside Country Club glittered under the late afternoon sun, a monument to wealth and exclusivity. Its manicured lawns stretched like emerald carpets, leading to an ornate building where grand arches and polished brass doors hinted at the opulence within. This was the venue for my grandson Leo's 5th birthday, a place so far removed from my own humble life that it felt like stepping onto a movie set. I clutched the small, carefully wrapped package in my hands, a simple, handmade wooden train, a testament to hours of love and sanding and painting, feeling utterly out of place amongst the gleaming luxury cars pulling up to the valet. My heart throbbed with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Excitement to see Leo, my precious boy, and trepidation about the inevitable encounter with my daughter-in-law, Serena. As I approached the main entrance, a hostess, Chloe, with a smile that seemed professionally frozen in place, stopped me. "Good afternoon, ma'am. May I have your name? This is a private event." Her tone was polite, but her eyes held a subtle skepticism, sweeping over my sensible dress and worn cardigan. "Eleanor Vance. I'm here for Leo's birthday party. I'm his grandmother." Chloe's polite smile faltered slightly. She consulted a tablet, her brow furrowing. "Eleanor Vance. I don't seem to have that name on the guest list, ma'am. Are you sure you're at the right event?" The implication was clear. I was not invited. My stomach clenched. Serena had done it again. "I assure you, I am. My son, Julian, and his wife Serena are the parents." I tried to keep my voice steady, but a tremor of humiliation ran through me. It wasn't the first time I'd been subtly sidelined, but to be questioned at the door of my own grandson's party felt like a deliberate slap. After a few more awkward moments and a discreet call, which I suspected was to Serena herself, Chloe finally, reluctantly, waved me through, her gaze still lingering with suspicion. The party inside was everything I had imagined and more. A wonderland of balloons, shimmering silks, and a massive cake shaped like a pirate ship dominated the main ballroom. Children, dressed in designer clothes, shrieked with delight, their laughter echoing through the high ceilings. Tables laden with gourmet food and sparkling drinks lined the walls. It was a lavish affair, designed to impress, and it starkly contrasted with my modest offering. Most of the other gifts were elaborate. Expensive toys in glossy packaging, piled high on a designated gift table. My little wooden train suddenly felt infinitesimally small, almost pathetic. Then I saw him, Leo. His bright eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on me, a pure, unadulterated joy lit up his face. He broke away from a group of children, his small legs pumping, and launched himself into my arms. "Grandma, you came!" he cried, squeezing me tight. That embrace, that genuine warmth, instantly melted away the sting of Chloe's questions and the grandeur of the surroundings. For Leo, I was simply Grandma. "Of course, I came, sweetheart. Happy birthday." I kissed his soft hair and then presented him with the small package. "I have something for you." His eyes widened as he tore away the wrapping paper, revealing the train. It was painted in vibrant primary colors, with tiny, detailed wheels and miniature smokestack. "Wow. A train. You made this, Grandma?" His voice was filled with genuine wonder, his little fingers tracing the smooth wood. "It's the best present ever." My heart swelled with a fierce love. This was why I endured it all. This pure, unblemished happiness. But the moment was short-lived. A shadow fell over us, accompanied by a voice like polished ice. "Leo, darling, what is that? We have so many beautiful presents waiting for you over here." Serena. She swept in, a vision in a sleek designer dress, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. She barely spared me a glance, her focus entirely on Leo and the wooden train. Her eyes, however, held a distinct disdain for my humble creation. "Put that down, sweetie. You don't want to get splinters, do you? Mummy has a brand new remote-control drone for you. Just like the one Daddy uses for his golf club." Before I could react, Serena gently but firmly took Leo's hand, pulling him away from me. "Leo, still clutching the train, looked back at me with a bewildered expression, his joy slowly fading. But I like Grandma's train. Yes. Yes. It's very rustic, Serena murmured, loud enough for me to hear. A small, dismissive curl of her lip. She steered Leo toward the enormous pile of gifts, implicitly relegating my handcrafted piece to the bottom of the barrel. She then turned her attention to me, her smile tight. Eleanor. I didn't expect to see you here. Julian told me you might be busy today. The implication was clear. I was an inconvenience. An uninvited guest. It's just, Julian and I are really trying to cultivate a certain social circle, you know? For his career. These events are so important for networking, and we really need to present a cohesive image. She paused, her eyes raking over me once more. And frankly, your presence, it just doesn't quite fit the aesthetic we're going for these days. The words, though delivered with a saccharine sweetness, were daggers. She wasn't just dismissing my gift. She was dismissing me. Julian, my son, had emerged from a small group of impeccably dressed men, his tie loosened, a strained smile on his face. He caught my eye, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the discomfort, the flicker of guilt. But it was quickly overshadowed by a nervous glance at Serena, a silent acquiescence to her dictates. He walked over, forcing a casual air. Mom, hey, I thought you weren't going to make it. His tone was too light, too rehearsed. Everything okay? Serena was just saying. Julian, darling, tell your mother. We're trying to make an impression here. This isn't the kind of crowd that appreciates homespun charm. Serena's voice rose slightly, drawing a few curious glances from nearby guests. Julian's face reddened. He lowered his voice, leaning closer to me, his gaze darting around nervously. Mom, please. Look, I know it sounds bad, but my promotion at the firm hinges on how well I integrate with these people. They're all about appearances. You showing up unannounced, especially after Serena told them. It's just not helping. It could really damage my prospects. Damage his prospects? My heart ached, not just from the humiliation, but from the realization of how much my son had changed, how thoroughly he had bought into Serena's superficial world. His career was more important than his mother's presence at his son's birthday. Serena, clearly enjoying her moment of dominance, straightened up. That's enough, Eleanor. You've made your point, whatever it was. Chloe. She clapped her hands sharply, drawing the hostess's attention. Chloe, would you mind calling security? We have an uninvited guest who simply refuses to understand social cues. The words hit me like a physical blow. Security. To remove me. In front of all these people. In front of my son. And worst of all, in front of Leo, who was now looking on, bewildered. A hot flush of shame spread across my face, but beneath it, something else began to simmer. A quiet, powerful resolve. This was no longer just about me. This was about respect. This was about dignity. As a burly security guard approached, Serena's smile was triumphant, cruel. I think it's time for you to leave, Eleanor. You've clearly outstayed your welcome. I met her gaze, and to my surprise, my voice came out calm, steady, and clear. Oh, I wouldn't dream of leaving just yet. Serena. I paused, letting my words hang in the air, feeling the sudden shift in attention. Serena's confident smirk wavered slightly. I wouldn't want to miss the arrival of my special guest. You see, I continued, my voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. I brought someone specifically for you. Serena's eyes narrowed, a flicker of confusion, then suspicion. What are you talking about? Who are you referring to? I took a deliberate step closer to her, my gaze unwavering, my voice now laced with a knowing undertone. Well, you always said you wanted to expand your family, didn't you, dear? A little bundle of joy, perhaps? A secret kept so well only a few knew. It's truly a shame you haven't told Julian yet. The color drained from Serena's face. Her eyes widened, a raw, primal fear, replacing her earlier contempt. She took an involuntary step back, her hand flying to her stomach, a gesture that confirmed everything. Julian, who had been watching in bewildered silence, looked from me to his wife, then back again, a dawning horror on his face. "What? What are you talking about?" Serena stammered, visibly trembling now, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. Who? Who did you bring?" I smiled then, a genuine, unforced smile that held no warmth, only cold, calculated intent. I turned slightly towards the entrance, my voice rising just enough to carry through the stunned silence that had fallen over the immediate area. "Alex! You can come in now." The silence in the grand ballroom was sudden, heavy, and profound. Serena stood utterly motionless, her face a mask of abject terror, every drop of blood seemingly drained from it. Her trembling hand still clutched her stomach, a silent, damning admission. Beside her, Julian looked like a man caught in a waking nightmare, his eyes wide and bewildered, darting between his wife and me, desperately searching for an explanation that he knew, deep down, he wouldn't like. "You should really be the one to introduce him, Serena," I said, my voice cutting through the hushed air, surprisingly calm. "After all, he's here for you." I watched her, a lifetime of suppressed hurt and recent revelations hardening my resolve. This moment, this carefully orchestrated unveiling, had been 3 weeks in the making, born from a culmination of slights, dismissals, and ultimately, a betrayal that cut deeper than any other. The seeds of Serena's campaign to slowly, subtly erase me from Julian's life, and by extension, Leo's, had been planted long ago. It began almost imperceptibly, with a dismissive wave of her hand or a patronizing smile. I remembered the planning for Julian's bachelor party. Years ago, I had suggested a simple weekend fishing trip with his old friends, perhaps a backyard barbecue, the kind of honest, joyful celebration he'd always loved. Serena had laughed, a tinkling, condescending sound. "Eleanor, darling, Julian's not a lumberjack, he's a rising star. We're thinking Marbella, or perhaps a private yacht in the Caribbean, something befitting his stature now. Not." She'd made me feel like an antiquated fool for even suggesting something so quaint. Their wedding was a grand, extravagant affair, a society event for Serena's connections, not a family celebration. I, Julian's mother, was relegated to a decorative role, seated at a distant table, my suggestions for even minor traditional touches ignored or scoffed at. "It's not in keeping with the theme, Eleanor," Serena had always said, as if my very presence threatened her meticulously curated facade. As their life together unfolded, the subtle slights grew into open dismissals. Our cherished family traditions slowly withered. Christmas dinners, once a boisterous affair at my cozy apartment, were replaced by formal, stiff gatherings at Serena's parents' sprawling estate, where I often felt like an outsider, barely tolerated. My apartment, which Julian had grown up in, filled with memories and love, became an embarrassment. "Julian, darling," Serena would muse, loud enough for me to hear. "We simply can't host the firm's partners in Eleanor's tiny space. It's just so dated. And the neighborhood, well, it's not exactly what they're used to." Julian, my son, once so vibrant and strong-willed, would always find excuses for Serena's snobbery. "Mom, you just don't understand our lifestyle now," he'd say, his eyes avoiding mine. "Serena's right. We have to keep up appearances. It's important for my career. You just don't quite fit in with the people we need to impress." It was always about fitting in, about impressing, about their new lifestyle. My heart ached each time, seeing him retreat further into Serena's fabricated world, allowing her to drive a wedge between us. The worst betrayal, the moment that truly shattered my illusions about Julian, occurred just a few months ago. I had been admitted to the hospital with pneumonia, a severe case that had left me weak and frightened. I had called Julian, my voice hoarse, hoping for his presence, for the comfort of my son. He promised to come, to rearrange his schedule, but he never did. Serena had apparently informed him that a crucial work presentation, one she had meticulously prepared him for, could not be missed. He sent a brief text, an impersonal apology about unavoidable work commitments, promising to visit soon. He never showed up until I was already home, recovering. That night in the hospital, alone, staring at the sterile ceiling, I understood that I no longer knew the man who was once my son. I also noticed how Julian slowly began to lose himself, shedding his old friends, the ones who had known him before Serena. His passion for hiking, his love for classic literature, the casual weekend basketball games, all of it faded away, replaced by golf with clients and forced networking events. He became a stranger, a polished, corporate version of the boy I had raised, constantly seeking Serena's approval, constantly trying to meet her impossible standards. The turning point for me arrived 3 weeks ago, not in a moment of dramatic confrontation, but in a quiet, unsettling observation. I had been visiting a friend in a neighboring suburb, quite a distance from Julian and Serena's home. As I drove past a secluded cafe, tucked away on a leafy side street, I saw Serena. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a picture of genuine joy I hadn't seen on her face in years. And she wasn't with Julian. She was with a man I didn't recognize, a man with kind eyes and a warm smile. They were sitting close, his hand resting gently, intimately, on her stomach, and Serena, who had never mentioned a pregnancy to Julian or me, was clearly showing a distinct, unmistakable bump. My mind reeled. Serena, pregnant? With him? And Julian, utterly oblivious? The pieces of a much darker puzzle began to fall into place. Her secretive phone calls, her sudden exhaustion, her aversion to alcohol at recent gatherings. It all clicked. This wasn't just a casual affair. This was a complete, shocking deception. A secret baby, not Julian's, nurtured in silence. That day, the despair and humiliation I had felt for so long transformed into a cold, clear determination. Serena had chosen to play a dangerous game, one that would destroy my son's life, and by extension, Leo's, if left unchecked. I decided then that I would no longer be the quiet, suffering mother. I would fight back, not with anger, but with truth. I remembered a neighbor who had once praised a private investigator for helping her locate a long-lost relative. With a trembling hand, I found the number and made the call. "I need someone discreet," I had explained to the man on the other end, my voice hushed. "Someone who can find out the truth about a person's private life." And so, Detective Mark Lee entered my life. I gave him the details, the suspicions, the fragments of observation. "I need to know everything," I told him, looking him squarely in the eye. "Every secret, every lie, especially about this pregnancy. Who is the father? When is it due? And who is this man Serena is seeing?" I felt a grim satisfaction as I spoke, knowing that for the first time in years, I was taking control, reclaiming a piece of my dignity, and protecting my family from a destructive lie. Detective Mark Lee had worked with a quiet efficiency that both impressed and unnerved me. For 2 grueling weeks, I had lived on tenterhooks, awaiting his findings, the dread and hope a constant battle within me. When he finally presented his report, the weight of the thick folder in my hands felt like the culmination of years of suppressed truths. The contents were devastating, yet sickeningly clear. Serena was indeed 8 months into an affair with a man named Alex Thompson, a real estate agent, the man I had seen her with at the cafe. Detective Lee's meticulous investigation left no stone unturned. He had uncovered a web of deceit so intricate, so callous, that it made my stomach churn. The report detailed how Serena had spun an elaborate fantasy for Alex. She had convinced him that she was already separated from Julian, that their marriage was over, and that she was merely biding her time to secure the best financial settlement from her powerful father's connections before officially filing for divorce. A cold, calculated move, designed to protect her image and line her pockets. The proof wasn't just in the meticulous timeline of their rendezvous, the photos of them together, intimate and undeniable. It was in the audio recording. Detective Lee had managed to discreetly capture a conversation between Serena and Alex, a conversation that laid bare her cruel intentions. Her voice, usually so controlled and saccharine, was sharp and calculating. "Julian is just a stepping stone. Alex, she had said, the words cutting through me even as I listened. He provides the name, the connections, the access, but once I have what I need, he's disposable. This baby, and here her voice softened. This baby will be raised by its real father. Our child. The phrase, our child, echoed in my mind, a chilling confirmation of my darkest fears. Not Julian's, not the legacy of our family, but another man's. And Serena, my son's wife, was planning to raise it under Julian's nose until it was convenient to discard him. As if that weren't enough, the financial irregularities unearthed by Detective Lee further solidified the depth of her betrayal. Bank records provided irrefutable proof that Serena had been systematically using Julian's credit cards, not for household expenses or Leo's needs, but to fund her lavish affair, expensive dinners, weekend getaways, gifts for Alex. My son was not only being cuckolded, but he was also unknowingly subsidizing his own replacement. Armed with this irrefutable, heartbreaking evidence, I returned to the present, to the glittering, hollow spectacle of Leo's birthday party. The crumpled documents and the small audio recorder hidden in my purse felt like an extension of my own renewed strength. The silent resolve that had bloomed in my heart earlier was now a burning, righteous fire. Just as I finished calling out Alex, the grand entrance doors of the ballroom, which Chloe had reluctantly opened for me, swung inward again. A man stepped in, looking utterly bewildered by the scene of a children's birthday party. He was the man from the cafe, the one whose hand had rested so tenderly on Serena's burgeoning belly. Alex Thompson. He stood for a moment, his gaze sweeping over the vibrant balloons and costumed characters, his handsome face etched with confusion. He looked out of place, clearly expecting a different kind of meeting, a different kind of ambiance. Then, his eyes landed on Serena. Her face was still ashen, her body trembling, her composure completely shattered. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Serena?" Alex called out, his voice cutting through the stunned silence that still held the immediate vicinity of our little drama. He began to walk towards her, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion. "What's going on? You said it was urgent. You called me here. Why are we at a kid's party?" Julian, who had been frozen in a state of bewildered shock, finally registered Alex's presence, his words, and his obvious familiarity with Serena. His gaze, which had been fixed on Serena's pale, terrified face, slowly shifted to Alex. The dawning of realization on his face was agonizing to watch. A slow, terrible understanding creeping into his eyes. His jaw tightened, his posture stiffening, the blood draining from his face as completely as it had from Serena's. Who is this man?" Julian asked, his voice dangerously quiet, a stark contrast to the usual boisterous energy of the party, now a muted hum of distant activity. His eyes, usually so mild, now held a cold, terrifying glint. Alex, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, the palpable tension radiating from Julian, stopped a few feet from Serena. He looked from Julian to Serena, then back to Julian's furious face. A flicker of alarm, then a sickening realization, crossed his features. "Wait," he said, his voice now cautious, almost accusing. "Who are you? You're the husband?" His eyes returned to Serena, now filled with an accusation that mirrored Julian's. "Serena? What is going on?" Serena, trapped between the two men, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her, was utterly speechless. Her perfect, practiced smile had vanished completely, replaced by a ghastly pallor and wide, terrified eyes. She could only shake her head, a silent, desperate plea for escape. I stepped forward then, my voice clear and unwavering, cutting through the thick silence. "Yes, Serena," I urged, my gaze fixed firmly on her. "You should really answer them. Both of them. Tell them exactly what's going on." I let the words hang in the air, a poisonous vapor, knowing that the truth, long suppressed, was now utterly undeniable. The grand ballroom, once alive with the joyous din of Leo's birthday, had fallen into a silence so profound it was almost deafening. Every eye, every whispered conversation, every burst of childish laughter had ceased. All attention was fixed on our small, volatile tableau. Serena, pale and trembling. Julian, a statue of bewildered fury. Alex, stunned and confused. And me, the quiet catalyst. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and the heavy weight of impending revelation. Serena? Alex's voice, though softer now, held a new, dangerous edge. He took a hesitant step closer. Is this your husband? Is this Julian? He looked from Julian's hardened face to Serena's terrified one, clearly trying to piece together the fragments of the reality crashing down around him. Serena remained utterly mute, her usual poised demeanor completely shattered. Her face was a ghastly white, her eyes wide and unfocused, darting between the two men as if seeking an escape route that didn't exist. The web of lies she had meticulously spun was unraveling before her very eyes, and she was incapable of even a single word to try and mend it. Julian, his face a mask of dawning horror, finally found his voice, though it was hollow, devoid of its usual warmth. He stepped forward, placing himself between Alex and Serena, effectively shielding his wife, though it was clear his intent was more territorial than protective. Yes, he said, his gaze fixed on Alex, cold and unwavering. I am her husband, Julian Vance. And you are? Alex's handsome features contorted, first with confusion, then with a slow, building anger. Her husband? He repeated, the words laced with disbelief and betrayal. But she told me, she said she was separated, that you two were getting a divorce. She said she was just waiting for the right time to tell you everything. His voice rose slightly, the indignation clear. He turned his furious gaze on Serena. Serena, what in God's name is he talking about? The murmurs from the surrounding guests, who had been silently observing, grew louder. Several people, mostly younger guests, had discreetly pulled out their phones, their screens glowing as they began to record the unfolding drama, captivated by the raw, unscripted reality playing out before them. This wasn't just society gossip. It was a front-row seat to a marriage imploding. Julian slowly processed Alex's words, each syllable a hammer blow to his carefully constructed world. His eyes widened, the hurt in them raw and visible. He looked at Serena, then back at Alex, a terrible understanding finally settling over him. We're not getting divorced, he stated, his voice now dangerously low, a tremor of suppressed rage in it. He paused, then delivered the next line, the one that would truly ignite the explosion. We're having a baby. The news of the baby, announced so casually by Julian, hit Alex like a physical blow. He actually staggered back a step, his face going as white as Serena's. A baby? He stammered, his eyes darting to Serena's stomach, which now seemed to protrude with sudden, damning clarity. But we're having a baby, he choked out, his voice a raw mixture of shock and utter disbelief. He grasped the implication instantly. Serena had been pregnant for months, and she had lied to both of them. Julian's head snapped towards Serena, his eyes blazing with a mixture of betrayal and sickening realization. The pieces of the puzzle, Serena's recent mood swings, her sudden aversion to wine, her vague excuses, were now violently clicking into place, forming a picture he could no longer deny. He turned to me, his voice a strangled whisper. Eleanor, what? What is going on here? He demanded. You brought this man here. You said something about a secret baby. You need to explain. Serena, her body shaking uncontrollably, was beyond explanation. Her web of lies, so carefully woven over months, had tangled into an unbreakable knot, strangling her ability to speak. She just stood there, her hands now clasped over her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face, the perfect image of a woman trapped and exposed. I knew this was the moment. The truth, in all its brutal honesty, had to be laid bare, swiftly and unequivocally. It was time to accelerate the collapse. With a calm I didn't entirely feel, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. The screen glowed, ready to display the evidence Detective Lee had so diligently collected. I scrolled briefly, then held the phone up, angling it so both Julian and Alex could see. The first image flashed on the screen. A crystal-clear photograph of Serena, locked in a passionate embrace with Alex Thompson, their lips pressed together in an undeniable kiss, taken just 2 weeks prior. Their backdrop was a familiar park bench, far from the country club, far from the life Julian knew. Julian stared at the image, his face a canvas of escalating emotions: hurt, confusion, betrayal, and finally, a cold, searing anger that transformed his usually gentle features into something hard and unfamiliar. He gasped, a short, sharp sound of utter agony. "Serena," he whispered, his voice laced with disbelief. Alex, however, reacted with a primal ferocity. He snatched the phone from my hand, his fingers surprisingly gentle, but his eyes burning with rage. He began scrolling, frantically, through the dozens of incriminating photos. Each click of the screen revealed another image. Serena and Alex holding hands at a restaurant, laughing together in a car, her head resting on his shoulder in a secluded cafe. The timestamps on the photos told a brutal story, stretching back for 8 months, a timeline that perfectly coincided with Serena's pregnancy. His face, which had been a mix of confusion and anger, now settled into a grim, devastating realization. Serena hadn't just lied about being separated. She had woven a complete, elaborate fantasy, playing both men for fools. He was holding in his hands undeniable proof of her sustained, calculated deception. The mother of his child was a cheat, a liar, a manipulator, who had used him just as she had used Julian. If you're as stunned as I am by this unfolding drama, make sure to keep watching. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of this unbelievable story. The silence that had gripped the opulent ballroom was now absolute, broken only by the muffled sobs escaping Serena's lips and the frantic clicking of Alex's fingers as he scrolled through the damning photographs on my phone. Julian stood motionless, his face etched with a pain so profound it was almost unbearable to witness. The sheer volume of evidence, the undeniable truth staring them all in the face, hung in the air like a noxious gas. "She's been lying to all of us," I stated, my voice cutting through the heavy atmosphere, clear and resolute. I looked directly at Julian, wanting him to understand the full scope of the deception. "Not just to you, Julian, but to Alex too. She played you both, using each of you for her own selfish ends." Julian's head snapped up, his eyes, dark with a mix of agony and rage, fixed on me. "How long?" he demanded, his voice strained, barely a whisper. "How long has this been going on, Eleanor?" He couldn't bring himself to look at Serena. Serena, crumpled and defeated, could only manage broken sobs, her head shaking weakly, unable to form a coherent response. Her perfect makeup, usually a flawless mask, was now streaked with tears and mascara, revealing the raw, ugly truth beneath the carefully constructed facade. "Since February," I answered for her, my gaze unflinching. "She started seeing Alex in February, and she told him you were separated, Julian. That she was planning to divorce you, just waiting for the right moment." Alex stopped scrolling, his face twisting with a fresh wave of disgust. He looked at Serena, then at Julian, then back at the photographs, the pieces of his own betrayal falling into place. "Separated?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with bitterness. "She told me she loved me. She said she was building a new life with me. For our child. She painted you as a work-obsessed husband she was finally escaping, and me as her fresh start. But it wasn't about love, was it, Serena? It was about what Julian's business opportunities could do for her before she moved on to what she called true happiness." His voice was a blend of anger and profound hurt, realizing he had been just as much a pawn as Julian. It was time for the final, devastating blow. I retrieved my phone from Alex's slackened grip, pressed a button, and the chilling, cold voice of Serena filled the ballroom, amplified by my phone's speaker. It was the audio recording Detective Lee had meticulously captured, the conversation between Serena and Alex, played for all to hear. Serena's recorded voice, clear and chillingly devoid of emotion, filled the room. Julian is just a stepping stone, Alex. He provides the name, the connections, the access. But once I have what I need, he's disposable. I just need to secure a few more deals through his father's contacts, make sure I have my financial independence, and then we can finally start our life together. A collective gasp rippled through the stunned guests. Julian visibly recoiled as if physically assaulted. His eyes were wide with a dawning horror, and his face paled further. He stumbled backward, blindly reaching for a nearby chair, sinking into it as if his legs could no longer support him. The weight of his wife's callous words, her cold calculation, was crushing him. Then came the final, brutal cut from the recording. This baby will be raised by its real father. Our child. The recorded words hung in the air. A death knell for Julian's marriage and a shocking revelation for Alex. Alex whirled on Serena, his face a mask of incandescent rage. Our child? He roared, his voice echoing through the now absolutely silent ballroom. Are you telling me this baby might be mine? That you've been lying to me about who the father is, too? Serena's perfect makeup, now completely ruined, streamed down her face in ugly rivulets. Her shoulders shook with desperate, uncontrolled sobs. Her carefully constructed facade had utterly collapsed, leaving behind only a terrified, cornered woman. I don't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible, choked with tears. I don't know. It could be either of you. The admission, raw and horrifying, hit both men like a physical blow. Julian looked up from his slumped position, his face a mixture of utter devastation and disbelief. Alex stared at her, his jaw slack. The confession, revealing her complete lack of certainty about the paternity of her own child, silenced the room even further, if that were possible. You don't know? Alex screamed, his voice laced with pure incredulity and disgust. You've been sleeping with both of us, stringing us along, lying to both of us for months, and you don't even know whose baby you're carrying? His voice vibrated with a profound sense of violation, a betrayal that went beyond mere infidelity. Serena, desperate, reached out a trembling hand towards him, then towards Julian, her eyes pleading. I love you both, she whimpered, a pathetic attempt to salvage some shred of her dignity. I love you both. In different ways. Alex let out a harsh, bitter laugh, devoid of any humor. Love? You don't know the meaning of the word, Serena. You've been lying to me about everything. About your marriage, about your feelings, about our future. I don't even know who you really are. He looked at her with an expression of such profound disappointment and anger that it seemed to physically wilt her. Julian, who had been listening to this exchange in stunned, agonizing silence, slowly pushed himself up from the chair. He stood tall, his gaze fixed on Serena, his face now strangely calm, stripped of all emotion, but utterly devastated. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet and controlled, but it cut through the air with a chilling finality. Neither do I, he said. The atmosphere in the ballroom was thick with shattered trust and raw emotion. Julian's quiet declaration, neither do I, hung in the air, a definitive severing of whatever bond he thought he still had with Serena. But I wasn't finished. There was one final piece of evidence, one last betrayal to expose, a detail that would highlight the sheer depth of Serena's calculated deception. From my purse, I retrieved the printouts of bank records. They were stark, irrefutable, and damning. I held them up, not needing to read them aloud, as the headlines practically screamed from the paper. And finally, I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence, the most callous betrayal of all. Not only was she lying to both of you, not only was she carrying a child whose paternity she couldn't confirm, but she was financing this entire affair with Julian's money. Julian's eyes, already glazed with pain, snapped into focus. He took the printouts from my hand, his gaze scanning the transactions. His face, already pale, drained of any remaining color. The records detailed charges for upscale hotel rooms, expensive dinners, designer watches, gifts Alex had undoubtedly received, all paid for with Julian's credit cards. Look at this, Alex, Julian said, his voice low, shaking with a new, icy rage. He thrust the records into Alex's hands. She's been financing her relationship with you using my money. She took my credit cards, my hard-earned money, to pay for your dates, your gifts, your secret weekends. While telling you she was an independent woman planning a divorce, Alex stared at the bank statements, then at Serena, a fresh wave of horror washing over him. The realization that he, too, had been a victim of her financial manipulation, an unwitting participant in a grand theft, was visibly sickening. "You stole from him?" he whispered, his voice barely audible, tinged with disbelief. "You told me you were financially independent, that you had her own money, that you wanted a life free from dependency. You actually stole his money to pay for our dates?" His face twisted with absolute disgust. The woman he thought he loved, the mother of his potential child, was not just a liar and a cheat, but a thief. Despite the overwhelming proof, despite the utter collapse of her carefully constructed world, Serena attempted one final, desperate manipulation. She smoothed her dress, took a shaky breath, and, summoning a last vestige of her manipulative charm, took a tentative step towards Julian. "Julian," she began, her voice quivering, trying to sound contrite, even loving. I know I've made terrible mistakes. Awful mistakes. But I choose you. I always have. This was a moment of weakness, a dark phase. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. For Leo. For our family." She even managed to produce a few fresh tears, hoping they would sway him. Julian looked at her, his expression one of utter, profound disgust. The mask of a loving wife had slipped completely, revealing the calculating manipulator beneath. "You choose me?" he scoffed, his voice raw with disbelief. "You choose me? After 8 months of lying to my face, cheating on me, stealing from me, and carrying a baby that might not even be mine? You stand here, in front of our son's birthday party, exposed for the cheat and liar you are, and you think I'll believe you choose me?" His laugh was a bitter, hollow sound. "You don't choose, Serena. You scheme. You use people." Serena's composure, though already fractured, cracked further. "People make mistakes in marriage, Julian," she cried, her voice rising in desperation. "Marriages go through rough patches. This can be our rough patch." Alex, who had been watching in stunned silence, interjected, his voice cold and hard. "You said you loved me. You said you believed in our future. You let me believe this baby was mine, that we would raise it together. That was no mistake, Serena. That was a calculated lie." He looked at her stomach, then back into her pleading eyes. Serena flinched, her gaze dropping. "It still might be," she whispered, her voice barely audible, betraying the lingering uncertainty and the depth of her deceit. "Might be?" Alex repeated, the anger in his voice reaching a crescendo. "I need a paternity test, Serena, and after that, I want nothing more to do with you, or with this poison you've brought into my life. I hope you find a way to explain this to that child, because I'm out." He threw my phone onto a nearby table, his face a mask of revulsion, and took a determined step back, away from her, away from Julian, away from the entire catastrophic scene. I stepped forward, my voice firm, final. "Your house of cards, Serena," I stated. "It's collapsing around you. Every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal. They're all coming down." Suddenly, Serena erupted. Her earlier tears and pleas vanished, replaced by a raw, unbridled fury. She glared at me, her eyes blazing with hatred. "You!" she shrieked, her voice echoing through the stunned silence. "You did this! You planned all of this to destroy my marriage. You've always hated me, always tried to drive a wedge between Julian and me, just out of spite." I met her gaze, unblinking. "You did that all by yourself, Serena," I retorted calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. "Every single bit of it." Julian, who had been standing silent, absorbing every brutal word, every damning revelation, now stepped forward. His face was pale, his eyes distant, but his voice was clear, strong, and utterly devoid of doubt. "We're done, Serena," he said, his words a death knell. "Whatever we had, whatever you thought you had, it's over." His voice resonated with a chilling finality that left no room for doubt or negotiation. As the words left Julian's lips, Serena's last shred of composure snapped. A desperate, animalistic cry escaped her. She lunged, not for Julian, not for reconciliation, but for Alex, clinging to his arm as if he were her last, sinking lifeline. Serena's desperate lunge for Alex was met with a swift, disgusted recoil. He pulled his arm away as if her touch burned him, his face a mask of revulsion. "Get away from me," he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. "I loved an illusion. Serena, I loved someone who doesn't exist. The person you pretended to be. I never want to see you again." With that, he took several deliberate steps back, putting as much distance as possible between himself and the woman who had so thoroughly deceived him. Serena was left standing alone, amidst the glittering ruins of her perfect party, her life, her meticulously crafted facade. The opulent ballroom, the lavish decorations, the curious stares of the guests. All now served as a grotesque backdrop to her public humiliation. As Alex retreated, a profound sense of relief washed over me. It was as if a heavy weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. For years, I had felt suffocated by her presence, by her insidious influence on my son. Now, I could finally breathe freely. Serena, however, was beyond reason. Realizing that all manipulation had failed, that both men had rejected her, she snapped. Her earlier sobs morphed into a hysterical meltdown, her voice rising to a shrill shriek. "Look at all of you!" she screamed, gesturing wildly at the stunned guests. "Staring, recording. You're all just vultures, aren't you? Enjoying my misery." Julian, who had been watching in stunned, agonized silence, stepped forward, his hand tentatively reaching out to her. "Serena, please," he pleaded, his voice tinged with a desperate concern that still clung to his shattered world. "Stop this. You're making a spectacle." But Serena was beyond his reach, beyond any rational thought. Her rant continued, her gaze landing squarely on me, blazing with a vengeful hatred. "And you," she shrieked, pointing an accusing finger. "You planned all of this. You always hated me. You've always wanted to ruin my life, and now you finally have." Alex, still close enough to hear, scoffed. "Eleanor didn't make you lie, Serena," he said, his voice cold and cutting. "She didn't make you cheat, and she certainly didn't make you steal." That last word, steal, prompted me to interject again. "Speaking of stealing," I said, my voice calm amidst her hysteria, "there are a few more details that Julian might find interesting." I glanced down at the bank statements still clutched in Julian's hand. "Remember that weekend a few months ago, Julian, when you were grieving your great-aunt, and Serena told you she was too busy with charity work to comfort you? That same weekend, your credit card was used to book a suite at the Grand Riviera Hotel. Champagne, strawberries, massage oil, all charged to your account, all for a romantic weekend with Alex." My words hung in the air, each one a fresh stab to Julian's already bleeding heart. He looked at the statements, then at Serena, then at Alex, whose face had gone pale again. "And that beautiful gold bracelet Alex is wearing," I continued, pointing to a glint on Alex's wrist. It was a distinctive piece, one I had seen in a jeweler's window, that was also purchased with Julian's credit card. A little token of love from his separated girlfriend, funded by her unsuspecting husband. Alex's hand flew to his wrist, his face a mixture of shock and disgust. He quickly yanked the bracelet off, throwing it to the floor as if it burned him. Julian's eyes, which had been fixed on the bracelet, now turned to Serena, filled with a new, bitter realization. "So, you were doing things with him," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Things you claimed were too busy, too tired, too uninterested for me." The pain in his voice was gut-wrenching, The understanding that his wife had been performing acts of intimacy with another man, funded by him, while denying him. "Serena, stop talking," Julian commanded, his voice suddenly sharp, a desperate plea for her to cease her self-destruction. But it was too late. She had passed the point of rational behavior, driven by a raw, primal need to lash out, to externalize the blame. "Stop talking?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with fury and desperation. "Why should I stop talking? It's all out now, isn't it? Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth." Her eyes, wild and bloodshot, fixed on Julian. "I never loved him," she screamed, the words echoing through the now absolutely silent ballroom, a chilling testament to her ultimate betrayal. "I married Julian because he was safe. He was stable. He had prospects. He came from a good family. Everything my parents wanted for me." A collective gasp swept through the remaining guests, as if struck by a physical force. Julian flinched, reeling from the blow. "But with Alex," she continued, her voice rising to a frantic pitch, "with Alex, I felt alive. He was passionate, exciting, everything Julian could never be. He made me feel wanted, desirable, not just an accessory to a career." She took a deep, ragged breath, oblivious to the horrified expressions around her. "I was just waiting for the right moment, for the right financial opportunities to present themselves through Julian's connections, and then I was going to leave him. For good." Julian stared at her, his face a mask of utter devastation, his eyes reflecting a pain I had never seen before. "So?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, broken and raw. You never intended to stay married to me?" Serena, in her delusional state, offered one final, brutal honesty, a twisted attempt at self-justification. "Not once I found something better," she spat, her eyes challenging him. "Not once I found real happiness." Alex stared at Serena, his initial rage now replaced by a cold, unsettling horror. "A placeholder," he whispered, the realization dawning on him. "I was just a placeholder, someone to make you feel alive until something better came along, or until you'd bled Julian dry." He shook his head in profound disgust. Julian, his face still etched with shock, absorbed Serena's cruel confession. Her past criticisms, her constant comparisons to other men who were more adventurous or passionate, suddenly made a sickening sense. "So that's what all the put-downs were for," he said, his voice a low rumble of pain and understanding. "Every time you told me I wasn't exciting enough, or ambitious enough, or that I didn't understand your needs, you were just comparing me to him, weren't you? Making me feel inadequate, isolating me from my own family, all to justify your own betrayal." I nodded, confirming his bitter realization. "Her goal was always clear, Julian. Either she'd reshape you into her ideal, or she'd abandon you once you'd served your purpose." Alex, remembering the ultimate deception, stepped forward again, his voice tight. "The baby?" he asked Serena, his gaze fixed on her stomach. "What was your plan for that? You were going to let Julian raise another man's child, weren't you?" Serena, her face streaked with tears and snot, offered no more lies, only a pathetic admission. "I was going to tell you it was yours, Alex. And Julian would have paid child support." "You're sick," Alex stated flatly, the word a final, damning judgment. Julian slowly rose to his feet, a chilling resolve settling over him. He walked past Serena, past Alex, towards where Leo stood, still clutching my handmade wooden train, his innocent eyes wide, trying to comprehend the chaos unfolding around him. Julian scooped Leo into his arms, holding him tight. He turned back to Serena, his voice quiet, devoid of emotion, but brimming with cold finality. "Get out of my house, Serena. Be gone by tomorrow night." Serena gasped, her eyes wide with fresh panic. "Julian, no! You can't! This is my home. It's my house." "Serena," Julian corrected, his voice firm. "My name is on the deed. My money paid for it. You have no legal right to stay there. I want you to disappear from my life." His words were a death sentence, cutting off any hope of reconciliation, any possibility of return. Serena's desperate pleas, her gasps and sobs, were met with the impenetrable wall of Julian's quiet resolve. He simply turned and walked away, cradling Leo, who nestled his head into his father's shoulder, still clutching the small wooden train, the one gift that represented pure, uncomplicated love. Alex, after one last disgusted glance at Serena, also departed. "My lawyer will be in touch about custody, Serena," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "I want absolutely no personal contact with you. Ever." Left utterly alone amidst the remnants of her grand party, Serena collapsed onto a chair, her sobs echoing through the emptying ballroom. A strange mix of pity and grim satisfaction washed over me. Pity for the pathetic figure she cut, but satisfaction in witnessing the inevitable consequences of her own boundless greed and deceit. I walked over to her, my voice calm, but firm. "It's completely over, Serena," I said, my words a final, unarguable truth. "You destroyed everything. Not me. You." I then turned and followed Julian and Leo out of the country club, leaving her to face the wreckage she had created. The next morning, Julian called me. His voice was raw, still heavy with the shock and betrayal, but there was a new tremor of clarity, of humility. "Mom," he began, "I'm so sorry. I was so blind. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you." I acknowledged his pain, the years of hurt she had inflicted on both of us. "It's all right, Julian," I said, my own voice thick with emotion. "What's done is done. We can't change the past, but we can focus on moving forward, on building a new future for you and Leo." The divorce proceedings were swift, relatively uncomplicated given the overwhelming evidence of Serena's infidelity and financial malfeasance. The paternity test, when it finally came through, confirmed what we all suspected. Alex Thompson was indeed the biological father of the child Serena carried, a little girl named Sarah. Julian processed the news with a quiet resignation, the final piece of the betrayal settling within him. The thought that Serena would have let him raise another man's child, knowingly, callously, was the deepest cut of all. In the aftermath, Leo adjusted remarkably well. With Julian's renewed, undivided attention and my constant presence, our grandson thrived. Julian, stripped of Serena's suffocating influence, began to rediscover the man he used to be, the kind, loving son I remembered. He reconnected with old friends, pursued his hobbies, and, most importantly, dedicated himself to being an active, loving father to Leo. Serena, on the other hand, faced the harsh glare of social ostracization. Her carefully cultivated social circle evaporated overnight, unwilling to be associated with such a scandalous display. Her own powerful father, embarrassed and furious by the public revelation of her theft and lies, withdrew all promises of business offers to Julian, effectively cutting ties with her as well. I saw a haggard Serena once, at the grocery store, looking a shadow of her former glamorous self. She started to approach me, a desperate plea in her eyes. I simply met her gaze, a calm, unyielding expression on my face, and turned my cart down another aisle. There was no going back, no enabling her further. Serena eventually moved back in with her parents, her grand ambitions shattered. Alex pursued custody of little Sarah through legal channels, maintaining his unwavering stance of no personal contact with Serena. As for me, I finally found a profound peace. The truth had prevailed. Justice, in its own messy, public way, had been served. 8 months later, my small apartment, once a quiet sanctuary, now vibrated with a warmth and joyful chaos that filled every corner. The scent of my homemade apple pie mingled with the comforting aroma of a Sunday roast. Leo, now truly at ease, giggled as he meticulously placed the last piece of a dinosaur puzzle on the living room rug, his small face alight with concentration. He wasn't just comfortable here, he was secure, thriving in an environment built on genuine affection, not superficial appearances. Just then, the front door opened, and Julian walked in, a wide, genuine smile on his face. He looked utterly transformed. The haunted, anxious man of a few months ago was gone, replaced by a content, confident father. He had received a significant promotion at work, a testament to his renewed focus and drive. Unburdened by Serena's constant demands and manipulations, he hugged me tightly, then scooped Leo up, twirling him around as Leo shrieked with delight. As we settled down for our cozy Sunday dinner, the conversation flowed easily, light, and filled with genuine affection. We talked about Leo's school, Julian's work, and my newfound passion for volunteering at the local community center, teaching adult literacy. "It's so rewarding, Julian," I explained, my eyes bright. "Seeing the light in someone's eyes when they finally understand something, when they realize they can read a story to their grandchild." Julian looked at me, his eyes filled with a pride I hadn't seen in years. "Mom, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You've always been so strong, so full of heart." He then shared an update on his own life. "The divorce is final, Mom. Signed, sealed, and delivered." A sense of profound relief washed over me. "And Alex, he has partial custody of little Sarah. He's a good man, just like us, a victim of Serena's deception." It was a strange twist of fate that Julian and Alex, once rivals, had found common ground in their shared betrayal, building a fragile, respectful understanding as co-parents to Sarah. Then, Julian took a deep breath, his smile widening. "I have some big news, Mom. Really big." He paused for dramatic effect, then burst out, "I found a house! A beautiful little bungalow, just 3 blocks from your apartment." My heart leaped. I stared at him, tears welling in my eyes. 3 blocks? Julian, why so close?" He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Because I want Leo to grow up with his grandmother," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want him to have the strong family support system he deserves. I want him to know what real family feels like, Mom. Not the superficial facade Serena always chased. I've learned that lesson the hard way. Real family, real connections, that's what truly matters. Not some fleeting ambition or social status." Just a few days later, a surprising call came. It was Patricia Crawford, Serena's mother. Her voice, usually so clipped and composed, was now tearful, raw with emotion. "Eleanor," she began, I just wanted to apologize. For everything Serena did. For her behavior. For the pain she caused you and Julian. There are no words to express the shame I feel." She confessed to Eleanor that Serena was struggling immensely as a single mother, overwhelmed and unable to accept responsibility for her predicament. Patricia even thanked me, through her sobs, for stopping Serena before she caused any more damage. It was a moment of unexpected empathy, a recognition from one mother to another, of the depth of Serena's destructive path. Julian, true to his word, purchased the charming bungalow near me. He sold his old, larger house, eager to shed the bad memories and the constant reminder of Serena's influence. My apartment, and soon my new proximity, became the heart of their lives. I was no longer just a visiting grandmother. I was an integral, cherished part of Leo's daily existence. A witness to Julian's blossoming into a happier, more authentic man. 1 year after the devastating revelation at Leo's birthday party, we celebrated his 6th birthday. This time, it was a simple, joyous family gathering at Julian's new bungalow, filled with laughter, homemade cake, and the warmth of genuine love. Leo, no longer distracted by lavish spectacles, beamed as he opened his gifts, which included another of my handmade wooden toys, a small, intricate car. Julian pulled me aside, his eyes shining. "Mom," he said, his voice husky, "thank you. For everything. For fighting for us. For not giving up on me. Even when I was so lost." I smiled, a lifetime of love and experience reflected in my gaze. I simply squeezed his hand. "That's what mothers do, Julian," I reminded him. "We fight for our children. Always." As I watched Leo and Julian laughing together, a profound sense of peace settled within me. The grand, opulent party, the bitter unraveling, the public humiliation. It all seemed a distant memory. a painful but necessary cleansing. What remained was real, genuine love, unconditional acceptance, truth. I realized then that I wasn't just in my home. I was home, the beloved matriarch of a family reclaimed, rebuilt, and defined by authentic, unbreakable bonds.